right, let's discuss a topic that is kind of scary today, but super important: TDoS attacks.
TDoS attacks?
Yeah, telephony, denial of service.
Right.
So today on Technically You, we are covering a type of attack that can disrupt telephone services for businesses, hospitals, and government agencies. So stick with us because we're going to break down everything you need to know about this threat.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say scary because a lot of people know about DDoS attacks that, can cripple the internet. They can,
Right,
but TDoS is kind of like that, but for phones.
that's correct.
And, sometimes having your phone go down is a lot more disruptive, especially if you need 911 or something like that.
Yeah. That's like a cold sweat moment right there.
I know.
So let's get to the point. Basically, it involves flooding a phone system with so many calls that nobody can get through or out.
Wow.
Imagine you have an emergency and need to call for help, and you just keep getting a busy signal.
It's a pretty scary thought, and that's kind of the point, right? It's not just about inconvenience. It's about cutting people off from emergency services, businesses, and essential services.
Right. So it's not just a minor annoyance.
No, not at all.
This is a serious problem.
And what I found interesting is the resource stated how these attacks have evolved. It's a never-ending arms race. These types of attacks usually start with something they call manual attacks.
Yeah, like back in the day, we used to have people do massive phone ins,
Oh, yeah,
like to a radio station or something.
exactly.
And it's the same idea, but with more malicious intent.
A manual attack is just the beginning. It then gets more intense with automated attacks.
What?
This is where it starts to feel like one of those hacker movies.
Exactly. It's like robocalls, but amplified. They use software just to blast thousands or millions of calls, often using voice over IP, also known as VoIP internet calling, which kind of masks their tracks.
Okay, so that's already pretty scary. But then there's this next level, distributed TDoS. This is where it gets super high tech.
Please explain.
It's like hacking into people's devices and creating a zombie army of phone calls.
Right. So they create what's called botnets.
Yes, where they coordinate control of multiple infected devices and attack. So it's like a swarm of locusts coming down on your phone system, and it can be almost impossible to trace back to the original source.
So they've got these different types of attacks, all with the same goal, just to shut you down completely.
Right?
So let's tackle how this actually works. And some of it's really unsettling.
Yeah.
On the simpler side, you might have just a lone attacker and some basic tools like a program that repeatedly dials a number. Something like that could easily disrupt a small business or even an individual home user.
Yeah, okay.
So it's not just big corporations that have to worry about this.
No, not at all.
But then you get into the more sophisticated attacks. And that's where those botnets we were talking about come in.
I see the connection.
They can launch massive attacks. Imagine a hospital's phone system getting flooded with calls during an emergency. Suddenly, people can't call 911 and doctors can't coordinate care. And
Oh my.
it's just chaos.
Yeah, it's a horrifying thought.
Yeah, I know. My source mentions what people and organizations can do to protect themselves.
Let's hear it.
The first step is having a good incident response plan in place.
Yeah, it's kind of like a fire drill for a cyber attack.
I like that.
If you know what to do when you're under attack, you can minimize the damage and recover a lot quicker.
And just like with any other kind of emergency preparedness, having redundancy is key, right?
Yes,
It's like having that backup generator for your house.
exactly.
If the power goes out, you're still good to go. So in this case, having alternative ways to communicate if your main phone lines go down is like having alternative ways to communicate.
Right,
Things, cell phones and text messaging.
right.
Different options, maybe even walkie-talkies or satellite phones if things get really bad.
Yeah,
You can also work with third-party experts to develop and test your incident response plan
yeah.
because you wouldn't try to, rewire your house if you didn't know what you were doing. You'd call an electrician.
Exactly. Call a professional.
Right. The same goes for your phone system security. There are people out there who can assess your vulnerabilities and help you put the right defenses in place.
Exactly. It's worth it, considering what's at stake.
Right. Our source also mentions performing cybersecurity assessments.
Yes,
It sounds really intense.
it is.
It's basically like giving your phone system a thorough checkup.
Right. Looking for weaknesses that attackers could exploit.
Eh, Okay, so it is kind of a proactive approach, like locking your doors to prevent a break in.
Exactly. Very similar. And there are actual tools out there
Oh, really?
called mitigation tools that act as a digital shield against these types of attacks
That's awesome.
for your phone system.
So instead of trying to, stop a flood after it's already happening, these tools are like building a dam beforehand.
Yes, exactly. That's a great analogy. They're designed to detect and block those suspicious calls before they overwhelm your system.
And it's not just about setting up these tools and defenses on your own. It's also about working with your local or regional phone company.
Right, absolutely.
They're kind of on the front lines of this.
Yeah, it's like a neighborhood watch. Yeah, but for your phone lines.
Right.
They can be a big partner in actually implementing a lot of these technical preventive solutions.
Yeah, it's a team effort.
Exactly.
Everyone is working together.
Absolutely.
Now, let's say the worst happens.
Okay?
You find yourself under attack.
Right.
Well, there are steps you can take while in the heat of the moment.
Right. And the first thing is don't panic. Remember that incident response plan we talked about?
Yeah.
Having that in place will give you those steps to take when things are hitting the fan.
So stay calm, even when the phone lines are going crazy. But what are some of the actual things we should be doing? I know they mentioned documenting everything as being super important.
Yeah. It's like collecting evidence at a crime scene.
Okay.
You want to save as much information as possible to help with later investigations. That means saving any voice recordings of strange calls or threats,
Oh, okay.
noting the time of the attack,
Got it.
how often the calls are coming,
Yeah.
any ransom demands, all that's valuable.
So you're basically like creating a log of everything that's happening.
Exactly.
It's like a detective's notebook. So what about the more technical details like IP addresses and stuff? Is that something you need to worry about?
Yes, absolutely. That's where something called log retention comes in.
Okay.
Your phone system actually keeps records of all the call data,
Oh, interesting.
including IP addresses.
Oh, wow.
And that can be really important in tracing back the source of the attack.
So it's like breadcrumbs
Yes, exactly.
leading back to the bad guy. And if things are really bad, can the attack be isolated? Yeah, like quarantine it.
In some cases, you can isolate affected numbers,
Oh, okay.
kind of like shutting off a couple of rooms in your house to contain a fire.
Right, right.
It helps protect those critical systems and minimize overall damage.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But let's be real, most people aren't cybersecurity experts. So where should somebody start if they want to learn more about how to protect themselves?
Well, our sources provided some great resources from places like the Department of Homeland to the FBI.
Gotcha.
They even mentioned CISA.
Don't they do like hurricane preparedness and stuff?
They do, but they also play a big role in cybersecurity preparedness. They have these really helpful guides that walk you through from assessing your vulnerabilities to implementing these things that we've talked about. And the great thing is they have guidance for specific industries.
Oh, so like a hospital can get advice that's really tailored to their needs,
Exactly.
which would be different than like a retail store
Right.
or a bank.
They recognize that one size doesn't fit. All right. And they've even got case studies.
Oh, I love case studies.
Yeah.
Those are helpful because it makes it so much more real. It's not just an abstract concept. It's like, this is what happened to this company.
Right.
This is how they were compromised.
Right.
And this is what you can do to avoid the same fate.
It's learning from other people's mistakes. Yeah, the mistakes can be very costly.
Right. It's not just a bruised ego.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got these resources. We've got our incident response plan.
Right.
Right? But what about basic security hygiene?
Yeah.
That everyone should be doing, whether you're a big company or just a regular person.
Well, start by taking a look at your phone system's security settings. Make sure you've got strong passwords. Get rid of any features you're not using. Lock down unsuccessful login attempts after 3 tries. Require PINs for all voicemail accounts.
Okay.
And if you're using VoIP, make sure your provider's taking security seriously.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to ask them questions about their TDoS mitigation strategies.
It's like asking your landlord about the fire safety system, right?
Exactly.
You want to make sure they got you covered.
Yeah. And, it's important to educate yourself.
Okay.
Stay informed about these types of threats.
Okay.
Learn to recognize the warning signs.
Yeah.
Be vigilant about anything that seems a little off.
It's like learning first aid.
Yeah,
You might not ever need to use it, but if you do, you'll be glad you know what to do. This kind of reminds me of something we haven't really touched on yet.
okay.
The human element of all of this.
Yeah, you're right.
Because even with the best technology in the world, you're still vulnerable if somebody accidentally clicks a phishing link or gives away their PIN or password.
Absolutely. That's why it's so important to build a culture of cybersecurity awareness, not just in organizations, but also among individuals.
Right. So it's like a community effort.
It is. Yeah.
We all got to work together to keep our digital neighborhood safe.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's about taking personal responsibility,
Right.
staying informed,
Yeah,
and being proactive about protecting yourself.
exactly.
So as we wrap up this Technically You podcast, I want to leave you with this thought. Voice security isn't just about protecting phone systems. It's about protecting people. It's about ensuring access to those essential services, maintaining trust in our institutions, and safeguarding our way of life. It's a shared responsibility. We all have a part to play.
Be sure to tune in next time for another Technically You look at the world of technology and cybersecurity.
So remember to stay informed, stay vigilant, and stay curious.